All right. We talk about the anatomy principle right now. This is, I think that's going to help you a lot in many things, you know, because we talk about techniques. When you learn Jiu-Jitsu, all about techniques, okay? In my opinion, you know, is all about anatomy, okay, the body, okay? Because you're fighting with your body against somebody else's body, okay? And that's the essence of Jiu-Jitsu. And then with that, each technique is going to be related to something. But there are things that are very important. And the moment that I learn about them, about anatomy, how we're going to do things, it helped me a lot in my game, okay? So I'm going to share with you guys. So first, let's just share a couple of things that is related to anatomy. It's like, there's something that's a very common mistake that people make. You know, mostly beginners or maybe blue belts. It's get to the point that hopefully you don't make that mistake anymore, okay? But if you're one of those guys that make the mistake, we're going to talk about that. And then you're going to move on to every piece, like the wrist, the shoulder, the elbow, okay? So, this thing here. I always tell my students, like, you gotta be coherent. Your body has to be coherent to what you want, okay? And sometimes people, like, they're so into the techniques in the moment that they forget what they, you know what I mean? Like, they do stuff that doesn't help them at all. And a good example is this. Side control is, I'm going to just give you an example, okay? So imagine somebody's walking right now and seeing me in this position, okay? A lot of times I see people like this. The guy's on top of you and the guy like this. Holding the guy. Defending here, holding the guy. Or holding the guy like this, okay? If I'm a stranger to Jiu-Jitsu and I walk outside and I walk from here right now in this moment and see me grabbing my partner like this, what do you think this person is going to think? That I want him to get out of here? I want him to stay here forever. Okay? I believe the guy going to think, man, that guy on the bottom really wants the other guy to be here. He's holding him so tight. But that's the opposite of what you want, right? So if you're a Jiu-Jitsu guy, you don't want to have the guy here. So why you going doing like this and sending the message that you want the guy here? Okay? So that's a very common mistake. And it's all about, look, not my body. See how my body is like sending the wrong message. Instead, where your arm should be? Here. Alright? Come back with the weight. Look, now the person goes here. Look, right now at this moment, you know what I mean? I'm ready to push my partner, use here, use my body. Okay? Well, my arms are underneath my partner. When you put arm underneath, you like not only defending your body, but at the same defend your arms, but at the same time you're being coherent. You know, I want to push him somewhere and create space. If I'm doing this, I'm definitely playing against me. All right? So this is a very common mistake that people make, and I just want to make sure that if you're one of those guys, you don't do this anymore. All right? So now we're going to talk about wrist. All right? So we're going to be on the next video. See you there. All right. So we're going to be talking about wrist first. So when we talk about anatomy, we're going to break down many parts of your body. If you be reading the book, that's how we break down the book. Okay? So I start with the wrist first because the wrist is the weaker part of your body, besides what? Your fingers, right? But in Jiu-Jitsu, some self-defense, we have finger controls and twists, okay? But most likely, we don't use that much because imagine if everyone starts twisting people's finger, and you're not going to have partners. Everybody's going to be broken hands, okay? But there is self-defense techniques that are involved about fingers, okay? But I'm going to skip the fingers, and I'm going to go to the wrist, which also, you have to be really careful in attacking the wrist because people might hate you for it. Easy to get, it's a shortcut, but shortcuts sometimes are not so good because you stop doing all the other good things and you just attack the wrist. We're going to give you an example, or many examples, how can you use the wrist against your partner, or even your wrist to create grips, okay? So one example is a wrist lock. So everything that's related to, put your hand on my chest. This is a common wrist lock. Okay? So go here, boom, pull the hip to you, and push, and base, okay? This is going to make your partner tap. Sometimes you're only going to tap when you feel the pain, okay? There are many wrist locks you can give, not only in your feet, sometimes you can grab a collar, break it here, okay? Or you can also do on the ground, all right? So that's one of the ways of using the wrist, you know, and if you know one wrist lock, we're not going to be talking about all the wrist locks right now. Just about that there is a wrist lock, and you should look for it sometimes, you know, there's a certain way to submit. It's very easy to get a lot of times, okay? But you got to be careful because people don't feel much, they tap too late, and you hurt your partner a lot. And if you hurt all your partners, you're not going to be welcome in your school, okay? So now we're going to talk about why other things are wrist important, okay? For example, arm bar. So I'm getting the arm bar, lay down. Once again, because the wrist is the weaker part of the body, when I go to the arm bar, I have to put my effort on the wrist. Sometimes I see people like going like this and try to put here, but you know what I mean? They don't go to the wrist. Okay? But once I get to the wrist to move, it's much easier to get him to move from here than get him to move from here. The guy's strong, man. You're going to be here like fighting all day long. There are, of course, there's ways to go to the wrist. So that's a good way. You put the arm here to the side and you go here. So you lock under your armpit and boom. Now let it go. Now what are you going to do? You're going to keep the wrist all the time with you. That's the pressure here. Why the wrist? Because it's the weaker part of his arm. Okay? So that's a good example. Wrist. Controlling the wrist for kimuras. You know, control the wrist. Perfect spot. Every time grabbing the wrist is always a good thing to do. Another example. You see my guard. So it's here. Block the wrist. Sometimes I defend my guard like this. And you know, gi or no gi. Block the wrist. See, sometimes if you're here, it's good. But look, if I block the wrist, it's hard for him to put the weight on me. If you put the weight on me, you're going to isolate his arm from me. Okay? Control the wrist. Now he cannot even pass my guard. I have to go around that way. And I'm blocking in a very easy part for him to block him. Okay? Of course, also if you grab something with his hand, it's going to always give him an extra leverage. So you don't want to like go here. So it's a good thing always to be track of the wrist is a good thing to do. In many different things, it can be here, control the wrist here. Of course, if you have the gi, you also can control. That's why people control here too, because it's really close to the wrist. They don't grab it here. You know what I mean? Or here. They grab it here. Look the wrist. They push the wrist, they pull the wrist. Okay? Those are the things you can do. Grab your own wrist. Also, other thing that you have to look for. Guillotine, for example. Boom. Grab here. Boom. Grab the wrist. You grab here, pull. All the times, a good guillotine, you'll be like, oh, put it here. Hey, stay here, stay with me. Pull. Look. Good guillotine here. Okay? So, why I pull his head to the other side? Because my weight's going to get the guillotine and I have here. Again. So if you've never done this guillotine before, we're going for you like here. Okay? And then keep in lock. Grab your wrist like this. I'm going to pull up. Okay? See, I'm not grabbing here. Grabbing my wrist. Here. Put your knee on his body. Leg here. Now, like, you know, if you go this way, it's hard for him because the more he goes this way, he's going to choke. If you try to jump to the other side, he can't because my legs are there. And meanwhile, pull. Other thing that's important, another example, and the last example we're going to give today, is grips. Grab a wrist. Okay? Boom. Bear hug. Good example of this. Of course, you can grab like this, you can grab like this. But look, wrist. I don't try to go beyond that. Okay? So it's like a good honest chance to grab the wrist. Okay? Here you go. Kimura. Boom. See? I'm bringing his wrist to the side. So this is just to give you a visual about moving the wrist around, using the wrist, use your own wrist. The perfect place to grab. This is sometimes people missing out, grab all the spots. If you're a beginner, they're going to help you a lot because you might not see where you're going to grab and where's the best place to grab. I'm just giving you a big tip. Alright? See you in the next video then.